Hi, this is Seth David from the world-famous Nerd Enterprises Incorporated, bringing to you another special screencast. This time we're talking about how to make sure you get paid. Tips for a well-formatted QuickBooks invoice. Now, when I used to work as an accounts payable clerk about 150 years ago at a small marketing company, I used to get a lot of bills every day. There were a lot of bills that had to get entered so that they could be paid. We had to enter the bills and run the reports, show the report to the owner. The owner would have to check off what to pay, and we'd have to pay them. So what would happen is I would get a lot of invoices, for example, where I couldn't quickly find the information I needed in order to get that invoice entered quickly. And guess what I did? I put those invoices to the side. And then I went right back to the ones where I knew I could find the information quickly. And what information am I talking about? Well, I need to know what the date of the invoice is because that's what QuickBooks is asking me for when I enter a bill. So when you're formatting your invoice, you want to think in terms of what do I need when I get a bill when I get an invoice from somebody? What information do I have to enter when I'm entering my bill in QuickBooks to pay somebody else? That's the same information I want to make sure I provide, and I want to make sure I make it very easy to find. So I need to know what's the date of that invoice, how much do I have to pay you? I need to know when is that payment due. I need to know what am I paying you for. I want detailed descriptions on those invoices so I can read it and pretty quickly figure out what account it goes to. I want to know where does that payment go. What address do I need to send it to? Don't assume I have it even if you've sent me bills for 100 years already. Don't assume I have it. Make sure that address is always on your invoice and always easy to find. And the other thing that I didn't mention yet is I need the invoice number. I need to know what the invoice number is because that's the important document number that if there are any questions later about what was paid and when, that invoice number is the thing I'm going to need to make sure I can track what I paid and make sure that it agrees with what you think I paid. So let's go look at an invoice template in QuickBooks. We'll click on this invoice button here. We'll blow it up. Right in the body of the invoice we have this customize button, and we can go to customize data layout. QuickBooks wants me to make a copy because I'm using their template. I go right to my layout designer here. Now, QuickBooks has a pretty well formatted invoice. It's not the prettiest, it's very boxy, but the important thing is that the information you need, for the most part, is exactly where it needs to be. First of all, a document title I didn't mention before, but it's important that because when I was the AP clerk and I got something, if I got a statement, I didn't enter statements. That's a big mistake a lot of bookkeepers make, is they enter statements, and what you do when you enter statements is oftentimes you duplicate, because a statement is a recap of prior invoices, so you never enter a statement. And for that matter, when you're on the sending side, when you're sending your invoice out, make sure it's very clear this is an invoice and not a statement. Because if you ever send an invoice to a bookkeeper that's been trained by me, and it's not clear that it's an invoice, it's getting put to the side. So make sure it's clear. Document title, very important. The invoice date is here. Terrific. Invoice number is here. Very good. The next thing I'm going to be looking for is the due date, not included on this invoice. Always make sure the due date is there. So important. So you put the due date somewhere up here where the rest of this important information is located. Get that due date in there. And then the next thing is, how much am I having to pay you? Now that I know when to pay you, how much do I have to pay you? Now, of course, here it's at the bottom, which is exactly where most people would expect to find it, and that's fine. But I still like to make a copy of this and bring it up to the top so that it's very clear. Right here at the top, total due. And of course, in another webcast, I would be teaching you how to go further and actually format this to make it look pretty. But for this purpose, I want to focus on the information that needs to be provided and where. So we've got the basic information for the data entry here. And of course, down here is where the description is going to be. Make sure you have detailed descriptions. My bookkeepers probably can't stand the way I make them send me their timesheets in because I require a tremendous amount of detail. When I send an invoice out to my client, that invoice is going to show them here's the starting and ending time, here are the accounts that were worked on, here is what was done, whether it was reconciled, which months were reconciled. I want all that information so that by the time one of my clients gets an invoice from me, there's almost never a question about what they're being billed for and why they're being billed what they're billed. It's usually very clear from the description. If anything, my hope is they look at that and say, wow, I can't believe they got all that done in that amount of time. So hopefully that's what you'll do when you send your invoices out to your clients so that they can, first of all, your data entry person on the other end can very quickly get the information that he or she needs to get your invoice entered as a bill in their system in 30 seconds or less. And for that matter, when the owner's looking at it, wondering what he or she is being billed for by you, they can look at those descriptions and not have to call you up with any questions. I've worked with CPAs and lawyers who send bills out that just say, for services rendered for the month of whatever month it is. And I never understood that. I never understood why they did that. I thought it was a little arrogant, and frankly, I watched them then spend hours of time that they can't bill for or shouldn't for sure, but hours of time on the phone with their customers explaining the bills to them. And they don't know because now it's a month later, they've they're looking at a copy of the bill. They don't know any better than the client does what they billed them for. They have to go back to their timesheets and reconstruct. Why do all that? Answer the questions before they're asked. Send the invoice out. They'll thank you for it. They'll see it's very clear. This is what I'm paying for. This is the information I need to process that payment. I'll get you a check right away. Last thing on that, speaking of getting a check right away, due date, due upon receipt. Worst thing you can do on an invoice. I know it's done all the time, and I understand that the idea is I want you to pay me right away. It's still too ambiguous. Be very specific. Give somebody a very specific date that says, here is when I want your payment. I want your payment on January 15th. That's when I want it. Don't tell me due upon receipt, because what that tells me theoretically is, well, I've just got your invoice in my hands. A minute has gone by. Now that invoice is past due. What are the ramifications? When do you really want the payment? Do you want it in a week? Do you want it in 2 weeks? Do you want it in a month? Be specific. Don't make me have to stop and guess, because guess what? If I'm not sure and if I'm in a bad mood that day, I might just put your invoice aside there, especially if you're a new vendor and I don't really know how you work. So be specific. Make sure the information's there. Make sure it's so clear. If you want any additional training on this or any topic that I ever cover, my email is seth@nerdenterprises.com. Simple questions are free. Email them to me. Give me a call, 866-945-8070, and I'm more than happy to arrange trainings with you online. We record the session. You share your screen. We coach you through whatever you need to learn how to do in order to become better, more efficient, and more effective at using programs like QuickBooks and Excel and many others that I cover on this and other blogs. I look forward to seeing you on the web.